Jean, you seem to wear a lot of hats in life. My introduction barely touched on your many skills and attributes. I can well understand why you needed a stage name to encapsulate what you do and who you are. How did you decide upon the Cosmic Oracle?
Oh, that's a good question, Sharon Ann. I was in meditation, and this was after my near-death experience. And I afterwards, one of the ways I healed myself was through meditation. And while I was sitting in meditation, it just came to me. It says, "You are the cosmic oracle."
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, I look around and I didn't hear the words, but I sensed it. The cosmic oracle. What's the cosmic oracle? So my feeling behind it was that when I went on my near-death experience, I was taken, one of the places where they took me was to a temple, a Greek temple floating in space.
Mm.
And later, much later, I went to Greece and to the Temple of Athena and to the Rock of Sibyl and all the beautiful temples there. And it was after I had visited that's when the cosmic oracle came. And I think it's because I really felt like I might have had a past life as an oracle, because it felt so I could feel it. I just could sense it and know it. There's a part of me that resonated with it to every part of my resonance of me, right? And so it just, when that came through, it just clicked. And so I feel like I'm when people come to me and my healing work that I do with people, I do a lot of one-on-one. When they come, it's like I can tap into something that's greater than me.
It's like
and that's right. And it's like the oracle would now. In the old days, the priest would then interpret what the oracle said. But I'm a women's, not a women's liver, but a women's, a real 20th century woman here. And I don't feel like I need anyone to interpret it. And so that's the difference. And so I feel like the cosmic oracle is taking a bit of the web of all that is and bringing it in, and then bringing it down into my crown and sixth chakra, and then sending that message out as a clear of a vessel as I can be, and neutral as a messenger to the person who receives it. So I don't do. Someone said, "Well, Barbara, do you do future readings? Is that what being a cosmic oracle is doing the future?" And I could see where they would understand that. I don't do a lot of future, though. I'm really careful of how I do that, because my job as a oracle, as a psychic, as a spiritual healer and teacher, is to show the doorways and put some light into darkness that can give the person receiving the reading some choices that maybe they might not have thought about. And so for me, that's more of an oracle, that I work with the person's spirit to spirit. And that's this lifetime, many past lifetimes, this body or not this body. It's interdimensional. It's all of the above. And that's the cosmic part. So that's kind of my definition of it. Just, I hope that makes sense in some way.
When you were talking before, I was getting this Atlantean feel too. So
yes,
it's got any connection? Because you mentioned the Greek, and I was thinking, oh, I'm picking up more of an Atlantean, like a water bearer, kind of that type of oracle person. That's how I kind of had you pigeonholed, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, and I ended up spending some time in Santorini. And on that island there, and they say that's where, there is a theory on the History Channel, or I'm not sure which channel, that actually that is where Atlantis sunk. And so there is that part. So you're right on target with that as well.
There you go.
Yeah, and it feels right. Sometimes it can be really simple and it just feels right. So it, and also it's stuck. The name stuck. They go, "Aren't you the cosmic oracle?" I go, "Oh yeah, I am. That's right." So
I think that's a great name, and I agree with you. the whole crown chakra and getting the information and that connection to the Akashic, I felt that when I've written a series of books, sci-fi novels back in between 2008 and 2011. I wrote 3 books and got them published in 2012, fortunately. And during that time, I would go to the library, and I'd drop my kids at school, and then I would go to our local library, and I'd sit down, and this would be around 10 a.m. in the morning, and then suddenly I'd wake up, and my alarm was going off, and it was 2 p.m. And I did that for roughly a 3-year block of time. And the librarians used to call me spooky because they say I'd go off to this. What I think I was doing was I was connecting to this Akashic record, because it was funny. I'd write in that vein. Probably every other day I would do this zoning. I call it zoning in. And then the next day I would edit what I had zoned or channeled. And when I started editing, I would do like research checking, obviously, to see, and I would find a lot of the stuff that I had channeled was real, which is, and that's kind of when you kind of wake up and you go, okay, there is something to, this Akashic, and that's, so what you were saying before, going through your crown chakra, and that made complete sense to me. I've actually had that experience myself. I can't seem to do it anymore. It seems to have just been in that time, those 3 years. So I don't know what was so different. I've never been a meditator, though. I'm one of these people that I have to keep doing things, or I can't just sit still. And there must be something for people like me. I don't know what it is.
Well, we each have to find what that is, right? That could be gardening. That could be walking. It could be going to the ocean. It could be knitting. I have a friend who knits. All right.
I do puzzles. I do love puzzles.
Then that could be it. That's your time. Yeah, where you're in between. Or I think most artists and creators get in like the zone that you're talking about, where they're the closest with spirit, where they're united, and that's where there's no time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's exact in this beautiful space. So it's a relationship that you build.
Yes,
and work it.
It kind of scared me, though, when a lot of the research I was doing, I was channeling really obscure detail, and I was then a few months later, I remember I'd be talking to people, and they'd say, oh, that's so and so, and I'd then go and do the research on that person, and it was what I had channeled, and it was bizarre. I know, like scary stuff. Spooky.
No, I have something similar in a different way. When I was able to go to Greece much later after the NDE, and we were at the Rock of Sibyl, all the different places we went, I went with 35 other psychics. And so we would get there, and amongst us, we would go into meditation, and you would go back in time and you would get a lot of information. I don't have those recordings, but you would see it so clear. You would see the people with their baskets, and you would see them coming, and the bustle of the town square, and like you were just right back there. So in all the information, like you were saying, the little details would come that a person, when you open your eyes and are back into current time space, you wouldn't have that information at all.
No, I know. Just amazing, hey? But I suppose it's part of the journey to realize that there's something more than just what we are, and and that time doesn't really exist.
Exactly.
So now, in 1989, you had a very public, and I say public, near-death experience. What brought on the NDE, and would you share your experience during the NDE itself, the actual where you went? Because it would have been quite a long one if it was 2 to 3 days, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was I was in 2.5 days, almost 3 days. What happened was, and I'll give you maybe the shorter version.
Yes.
Okay. I went into the building. It was kind of a strange day. I went into the building with a friend and sat down at a women's healing event. And I was there because I had trouble breathing. And when I sat down, there were like 1,000 knives into my chest,
Oh.
and I couldn't breathe, and I was gasping for air, and but I couldn't really say anything. And what happened is that I passed out, and when they took me and sat me up in a chair, I full body channeled a being from Egypt.
Oh,
And I
wow.
had no idea that I had the ability to channel. I
Mm.
went there to meet my friends and her mother for the first time. And
Oh,
she
well,
said
that's a
later,
good intro.
and she said later, Mom, she's not normally like that. So don't, okay. And I did meet her later. And what had happened to me when I sat back up, I looked very ancient. I looked kind of a green veneer color to my skin, even is what they told me. About 35 of the women, I talked to them afterwards because I checked out. The pain was too excruciating. So I checked out. So there was a fight for my soul there, because the being that came into my body then shouted to the women, or very loudly, that he was here to kill Barbara Jean because she had information that couldn't be given at this time. And then he collapsed both my lungs.
Mm.
And so when he did that, I shot totally out of the body. And then they took care of my body. It's in an ICU unit. I made it. I flatlined. They did the defibrillator so many times that it just really fried me on the inside. I have some things from that afterwards. But as I'm fighting for my life, they did give me the last rites. Said that when I come back, that I probably wouldn't be like the Barbara Jean that they knew before.
Mm.
And so it was really at death's bed. They didn't think I would make it through the night at all. So I have this all going on in the hospital at that. They moved me from the women's retreat to the ICU unit. And we have the whole school, about 800 people, maybe half of them or so, praying for me too and seeing what's going on. At the school, what the psychics said in a row, you have a row of psychics that are reading the energy. They said that they saw this being as the ancient Egyptian being was a very strong being, and he was there to kill me, but it didn't happen because another being came in and fought him for my life, and that being's name was Thor. And that's and I had no idea. This is back in December of 1989, so none of these Marvel stories were out. None of that was out at that time. But that's what came in. And later I developed a relationship with Thor, but that's a whole nother story. But at the time, he fought and protected me from evil.
Mm.
And so as that was happening they were doing with my soul, my body was being watched. I checked out. I wasn't aware of the fight. I wasn't aware of my body at all. And I had absolutely no pain, not one sense of pain. And where I went was this beautiful, dark, undulating water, warm water. And I'm floating in this warm water with no ending, no beginning, as far as I can see, of this love water. It's all this love. I'm the love. It's me. I'm it. It's intelligent. It's creative. It's moving. And I'm just blown away with how much love that I'm a part of. And I just have a total melt into this holy of love, cosmic love that's with unconditional love that is beyond anything that I had ever experienced. And I'm a very loving, giving person naturally, and I had 3 children that I adored. But this was beyond anything I had ever imagined to be in this much love. And I'm in this love, and I'm floating there, and I'm becoming one with it, and then one with everything. And I totally let go and let go and let go. And I'm in this blissed out, loving, expanded consciousness space beyond. And then in just a split second, I look down and I notice I don't have a body. And I go, what? I don't have a body. How can that be? How can I exist without a body? How is that possible? Because I was a single mom with 3 kids. I didn't know anything about any of this. Okay. So I I was blown away, absolutely totally blown away that, and I was trying to rocket in my reality, in my perception. So really I was kicked out of my matrix of who I thought I was at that time. And in that moment of trying to figure out in a way of how this is starting to work, I go in a second and I'm up on a spaceship. And it's the first time I'd ever been on a spaceship that I knew of. Okay. And so when I get on the spaceship, it's a circular room. It has no, very soft and white and no seams. It's very smooth and slick, but sweet smelling. And I'm sitting in what I called at the time a dentist-like chair, where I have my feet up in little place
Like stirrups.
stirrups, yes, in stirrups, thank you, in stirrups, and my hands are on each side in these cushions, and I have a cushion for the back of my head, and I'm just kind of hanging there, and it's just really comfortable, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm a 37-year-old woman, I'm from Earth, but this doesn't feel like Earth to me, you know, so, but I didn't freak out at all. I'm just thinking, wow, this is interesting. And in that moment, the tallest being I had ever seen, probably about 8 foot tall, maybe taller, comes floating towards me. I couldn't see his feet, but he was very beautifully, gracefully comes towards me. And he has a big white hood on, and he has big, huge white shoulders, long white robes, long flowing robe down, beautiful Leonardo da Vinci hands, gorgeous. And I look into his big white hood, and he's faceless. It's dark, it's black, but I don't freak out. And he says to me, goes, you may call me the guardian, and I'm here to interpret between you and some beings that you're going to meet. And so I said, okay. And then he just takes his hand and moves it out, and then a light appears to my right, and it's a large glass wall. And behind the glass wall are about 10 beings. I don't know. I didn't count them. I wished I would have, but I didn't. And there's like taller ones, there's fat ones, there's skinny ones. They all have their personalities, and they're all telepathing amongst themselves. They have the same white robes on. I can't see their faces. And I was a designer at the time. I'm thinking, did they get them on sale or something? You know, because I'm thinking, you know, when you think they would have some kind of difference, but they didn't. And so then they would talk amongst themselves, telepath, get excited. They would tell that information to the one person or the being, and then the being would tell my guardian, and the guardian would tell me. And that's how we went back and forth. I don't remember exactly what was said, but what they decided was that they would show me, I think they had already planned it experientially, and that's how they taught me. So in that next moment, a round circular window comes toward, become one with the Mother Earth. She comes right into me, and I become one with her, and we resonate at the same heartbeat, that her heartbeat is my heartbeat. And I didn't know how beautiful our planet was. I didn't know how alive she was. And I cried like a baby. I just cried because I just felt like she was there, and I was an idiot. Like, you know, I didn't know that she was alive and she was beautiful, and that we needed to protect her and take care of her, that she's a jewel in our galactic system. And we have to take care of her. We must take care of her. We're guardians of her. And then my heart and her heart became one, like a drum, a native, a Star Nation's drum, of just a beautiful heartbeat and a resonance with her. And I don't know how long I was there, but her and I became like this. We became like besties, okay? And so I'll talk later maybe about what happened in my life because of this experience. So from that experience, and just in a minute, just in like a snap of a finger, after I got what I needed to get there from that teaching, then my guardian and I flew out of the spaceship, and we're flying over hills, these huge hills and valleys of trees, just
Mm.
forest and millions of miles of forest, not millions, but miles and miles of forest. It just, for as far as my eye could see, it was forest. There were no human buildings, no uh, any attachments. It was just forest. Since then, the closest I've gotten after the experience was England. England, you know, the England forest in
Yeah.
Scotland, Ireland, and that. And the green was just beautiful. It was the most expansive green, technicolor green I had ever experienced in my whole life. So
Amazing.
many varieties of green, and my heart burst open with love. Just, I had been going through a divorce, and so I feel like it just healed my heart. It healed every aspect of me with the color of green. And so I'm with that, and then in a heartbeat, the next step, then I'm going down on a steps, and I go up these steps. Are like alabaster steps. They're lit from above. I'm barefoot, but I look down. I still don't have a body,
Mhm.
but I go up the stairs, and there's a platform, and to the right is these beautiful circular columns, Greek columns with a round rotunda, but it's open and it's floating in stars. So we're floating in the middle of the galaxy around these stars. And I walk across the grass. I could feel the grass on my feet, but I don't have a body.
Mhm.
And there's that group of beings, the same robes. I don't know what's up with that. The same, I
Big
really,
sale.
you know, it's on sale.
Must be a New Year's sale, Boxing Day sale.
And maybe it was for my comfort. That was something that I
Yeah.
could be okay with, right? And so they're in a big circle, and they open the circle and they let me in, and they take both my hands. And the moment I take their hands, it's like electrical charges through our hands, and we become one, a synergetic field. And then in the middle is a column, and in on top of the column is a bowl, and in the bowl are these white vapors coming down, and there's a hologram of the earth again. And what they tell me is that they're the watchers, and they've been watching the earth, and that they will protect her, and they're not going to let anything happen to her ever. And that I'm a part of that. I'm a part, and I could come back anytime I wanted to be with them and be a part of this whole galactic system that's in place to help protect her. And so I stay there. I don't know for how long. And they do kind of a guttural kind of a sound, a real low, like a Tibetan chant almost. Really beautiful, really ecstatic. And I'm there. And then the guardian comes up to me, and he doesn't say anything because I can't see his face. And like, hey, it's time to go. So I say goodbye to them. And then we start moving. And the next thing I remember is going up these stairs and around, and there's like a bridge like at the top. And I look down, it's like a Victorian house, a humongous Victorian house with the big white window panes. And but up at the top, it's opened again where you could see the stars. There's jazz-like music, and there's people everywhere, all kinds of different kinds of beings. I'm the only human that I could see. There was like a pink elephant. I remember him. He was an elephant. I swear he was like a bright popsicle pink elephant that was talking with someone. There was one that looked like a teddy bear with a monocle, and he talked to me like a professor. He wanted to see what it really looked like. It's like he had studied humans before, and he actually got to talk with someone in their native tongue. So he actually talked to me, and I still didn't have a body, and he was so excited about it. And then the other person was like an admiral with these big square shoulders, but he had these gold admiral looking things on his shoulders, and he had a little button, like kind of like a Star Trek thing, but
Oh,
that
yeah.
he would tap, and that way he could communicate with me.
Mhm.
And my guardian stayed really close to me, but I felt like I was on display for everyone.
Yeah.
And what they told me was that it was a galactic party, an ambassadors party, and that they would meet to discuss and handle and work out different problems and help create a peaceful future with all the different societies and whatever they're working with. And so I felt really honored to be there. And I'm a foodie, so I'm thinking I wasn't hungry, but they didn't eat food, but they had these tall vials of different liquid colors in primary colors that they would drink. And I thought that was pretty cool. But I couldn't drink because I couldn't see my body. But they did say, we love your smile. You have an amazing smile, and we're so glad you're here. And so I said, thank you. But, I was just totally like a view, like a perspective of a narrow view of everything. I had to kind of turn to see things. So I'm watching this and being a part of it. And I remember saying to myself that I had to remember this. It was really important that I remember this. And in that moment, I was having such a good time, though, talking with everyone. Everyone was having a good time there, was very relaxed. And so then in just a heartbeat, he comes up to me, the guardian, and he says, it's time to go. And we start kind of swirling around and out. And then we're swirling around in nothingness. And I'm kind of just swirling and dancing around, having a good time. And then as I'm there, a group of women start to come towards me, and they're like Greek goddesses, the Greek thing again, we were talking earlier, Sharon Ann. And they're in jewel tone colors. There's some in turquoises and some in lapis and some in a bright orange and amber, and they have beautifully enameled jewelry on, and they have long hair. Some have red and blonde, and they're just beautiful, all different skin tones, and they have instruments, and they sing in tone, in a very high operatic, like a siren voices. And they say their work with me is to help me find my voice. And I couldn't leave until I did. And I said, well, I'm an alto, okay? So there's no way I'm going to be able to sing like you sing. And they go, well, but if that's your voice, that's your voice. And so I did find it, and it was very low, and sang with them. And then he came to me, the guardian, and said it was time to go. And I didn't want to go. I was having such an amazing time. I was so happy. Everything was so bright. I felt more alive in the afterlife, or in this dimension, than I had ever previously on the earth plane. And so I really wanted to stay. And then he said, well, you have your children. And I go, oh my gosh, that's right. I have 3 children. I have to go back. And so then as we start to go back, we see my friend sitting at in a hospital. She's sitting on a chair, and I'm thinking, what is Cindy, my friend, doing at this chair? And I look down, and there's a body on the bed, and I, oh my God, that's me down there. But I didn't freak out or anything. I just said, oh, that's me laying down there. And I said, well, you don't look so bad, but you look a little puffy, girl. And so I'm seeing my body there, And so then I come up to him, and I said, look, if I'm going to go down there, I'm going to need some help. And I really need you to give me something to help me to make it down there, because it's pretty tough down there where I'm going back again after being where I've been and doing what I'm doing. You expect me to go from this state into this new state without any help? And he says, well, and I threw a fit like a little 10-year-old. I really did. I did. And he thought it was so funny. He laughed. He started laughing. And I said, well, can I get like a gel-free card, or a pass, or just something? And he said, well, we will gift you the gift of white light. And I said, well, that's all you're going to give me? And I'm just a little brat. And he gave me the gift of white light. I know what that is now, but I didn't at the time. And it is quite a gift. And so then I go, okay. And so I go down to my body, and he says, oh, one more thing. And so I go back up again. We're floating in the corner of the room with my body down below and my friend in meditation there. And he says, before you go back, we would love for you to be an ambassador if you'd like. And I said, oh, yeah, I'll do that, without thinking. Yeah, I'll be an ambassador. So as I'm going to float back down into the body, I'm thinking, an ambassador of love, an ambassador of the arts, an ambassador, what could he mean? And I looked back, and the guardian was gone. So then my next job is to acclimate myself down into the body. So I just acclimate in with all the white light that I am, my beingness, and I just acclimate into the body. It's like trying on new shoes, you know? And so I get back in to all of me, that is, into the body. And I remember kind of wiggling a little bit to make sure it fit perfect. And then it kind of like a click. And I sit up and I had the tubes in my mouth and I just said, I'm starving. I want some nachos.
Welcome home. Let's go to Taco Bell.
Yeah, nachos. And so everyone was just blown away because I wasn't supposed to make it, you know, at all. And then to come back with this story, and they did all the testing and I was totally fine. So that's my story. That was 30 years ago. And I really try my best to not embellish or take away, or really do the best that I know how of having the story exactly how it happened.
No, well, that sounds amazing. Do you know, as you were saying it, you know, one of the things that I've never been able to get my head around is like when you go out of the body, I imagine it's very similar or maybe the same as astral projection, like basically your soul, even though there's still a tether of some type to the physical body, you're basically going out into the astral. And but then, and you're floating in this pool, as you said. I can understand that being the astral, but when you then transfer yourself to the ship and to the beings and that, are you still in the astral, or is that actually reality, like real reality? Like this is reality, but there's also another real reality elsewhere.
It's the best way I can explain it, it's another dimension where I exist, where I can exist, where there's a lot happening, and where I can be there as well as be here. So it's almost like bilocate in a way.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like I can leave some energy in my body. I didn't leave much because there wasn't much of me left. And I think I could only leave just a little bit in order to have such an extraordinary experience. Yes. I had to have a lot of me on the other side, more me on the other side than running the body on this third dimension. So that's my feeling on it, that I was more there than here.
Yes. Well, that's how it sounded too. So yeah, I suppose it's all phrasing, isn't it? It's like, I don't want to label things, but sometimes you know, it makes more sense to me now that you've said the word dimension, you know, I can actually visualize that a bit more. So most people who experience an NDA, Barbara Jean, refer to them as life-changing, of course. So did you change your lifestyle in any way? And did you cleanse the people in your life? I notice a lot of the time when I talk to people that have had NDEs, the first thing they seem to do is get rid of everybody from their life, from their circle, except for family, and even some get rid of family as well. And basically, it's like they're a walk-in. You remember how I think it was Doreen Virtue that did the Earth Angels? Was it her? Or I think so. And she explained a walk-in is like a new person walks into the body, the physical body of another person. But I find with a lot of NDE people, they act like walk-ins after they've had their experience. What was yours? Was it life-changing?
It was life-changing, but I have to say I definitely was not a walk-in. Because when a walk-in comes into a body, it has no memory or very little of what happened to that body previously.
Now you were returning.
I returned, man, and I re-owned everything, right? And I was vitally alive with no filters. Okay, so
no
filters, okay, very little filters, all right? And so I was free, you know, and so I loved everybody. So I was kind of loving to start with. So it was like, you know, people started coming to my room. My room was the party room at the hospital where people would come and get joy and love and hear my story, or I would help people. And the way it changed is I had been studying psychic work before that, but afterwards my psychic abilities turned on 100% and I couldn't shut them off. And so I had to learn how to acclimate that. So that was a big change for me. I would, people would come in, I would know they were lying to me. I know what was up with. So I would just kind of scan them and read them, and know what the truth is. But I really had this filter of no filters at all, and really love everybody. That was a huge change. And then
I love the way you said that. It makes so much sense, because that's what usually happens when you have an experience. You suddenly realize the bullshit of trying to hide things.
Right. But I did have 3 kids. One son was a teenager, and so it wasn't easy for them. They went through this transformation with me as well.
Yeah.
And so we would walk into like a local, at that time, 7-Eleven store to get the kids a Slurpee or something like that. And I would read the person, and the person would know I was a healer or a teacher or whatever I was. I don't know what I was. I was acclimating. All right. And so he would come up and just start crying, or I would say, your Uncle Bill's going to be fine. I was no filters and an out of control healer. Okay. And so it was like, I was like this whirlwind, coming in. So it took me a long time to be able to really be in the body again in a way that was acceptable by others.
Socially acceptable.
Socially acceptable, yes.
Yeah.
And so I did finish my divorce with my husband. That first year, I closed my fine art gallery. I closed my design business. I moved my children to Marin County, and I was going to go back to school. But I also dedicated my life to doing healings and readings for people, and I've done that for 30 years. So it totally changed me in just about every way, possible. It was just how do you put a whole gallon of liquid love into a thimble? That's what it felt like, And so it took some time, and I didn't know anyone else who had that experience. That was part of the.
Years ago, no.
Yeah, it was 1989. There was no, I had to read. I'm a voracious reader still to this day, and so I tried to read as much as I could about the subject, and learn through people that would come to me. I had some amazing adventures afterwards. I traveled the world, and it's just been a crazy wild ride for many, many, many years. And but I'm doing what I came here to do, and I found what that is. And it's about love. We come from love, we are love, and we return to love. It's really simple in a way, but to walk that as much as I can, I try and do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So did you do any further research on that ancient Egyptian being that played such a large role in the NDE?
I did. I went to Egypt twice.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, one was by mistake or coincidentally was a writer's tour for writers only, and I didn't know that. So I show up there, and I don't have any of my stuff, so I learned there. But I learned that I could be okay in Egypt and be there and not die. Number one, after having that experience. And I went again the second time, and I had a whole nother experience. But recently, I don't know how long, it's funny, I'm not as good with linear time here, but it was I'd say maybe a month or so ago. It has taken me 30 years that I had a regression about that. And that was with Barbara Lamb. She's she's a friend of mine, and I trusted her to do it. And what we did is we went back in during that fight for my soul, because I wanted to know for myself too, because I had these other people telling me, but I wanted to find out for myself. And so that's where we started. And I'll give you the short version of it. The being was there in another timeline as well, is kind of what we saw. And that he came down off a ship. He was huge, like 15 feet tall, had kind of an Anubis head, or an Anubis looking helmet on, with this gun looking, a very modernistic gun, and came out, and I was there as a leader with my people. That's how it came down. And I was telling them that they were okay and we didn't need to be afraid. And they came off the ships and annihilated everybody. And my last memory with him was he was taking his whatever it was and putting it right through my heart. And so what we saw is that he was not only doing it during that time in 1989, but he was doing it through the timelines as well.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's really a kind of a tripped out story. And so I went back in then and worked on healing that and forgiving him and forgiving myself for being an idiot for taking these people with me. And so I worked a lot on that. And from having that one regression, my asthma got much, much, much better.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So,
it is amazing with the regression therapy how a lot of things, health issues, clear up. I had a regression, probably 10 years ago. And up until 10 years ago, I used to have this stabbing pain in my neck, back of my neck on the right-hand side. And it would play up every so often. And I discovered in a regression, and I seem to have lived a lot of times from the amount of regression I had. I thought it would be like a 30-minute. It ended up being 3.5 hours. And I actually went into a future life, which threw me. I had no idea there were future. You can do that. And we'll have a discussion on that at some point too, because I'm sure you'd actually enjoy that one. And basically in a past life, I think it was in Scotland or somewhere, somebody that I had trusted, had great trust for, had killed me by sticking a knife in the back of the neck. Wow. And as soon as I had kind of realized that, I've never had the issue since. And it's a lot of people also that have addictions to things, I've been told, like smoking or eating, or I have a girlfriend that used to overeat, and she spent her whole, up until her 30s, overweight, like a good 10 to 15 kilos overweight the whole time. And she went and did a regression, and she discovered that in 1940 she was in Germany, and there was the starvation of German people after the war. Not a lot of people realize a lot of German people, like millions of Germans, died post the World War II due to the embargoes that were placed on the country from the US and UK and the alliance at that time. And she was one of the starving German people who were, and she starved to death. And basically, once she had done that regression, she then, within like a 6-month period, she went to her BMI, or whatever we call it, a BMI, which is the actual ideal weight for her body shape, her body mass index, they call it, I think. And she's never been overweight since. So there is a lot to this regression therapy, which people, and the same with like illogical reasons to fear things like spiders. Or I also had vertigo for years up until 2006, and then I did the regression, and I discovered that I had fallen from a high tower or been pushed. I think that mustn't have been very nice. I got killed a lot. It's quite funny. Every time I went from life to life to life, I was thinking, oh my God, why am I always getting killed by somebody? This is like, I must have been a really bad person. Or, and I've got better. The last few 100 years, I managed to. The most amazing one for me was I was a dragon handler.
How cool is that?
During the Crusades, which I know. So I had a wonderful experience as a dragon handler. And I didn't get killed by the dragon. Bonus.
Wow.
But yeah, so I think there is a lot that could be unpacked from a psychological perspective on regression for people that have addictions or have illogical reactions to certain things, because I know I've had 2 things cured through regression therapy, which, were illogical, I suppose. They were mental issues. They weren't like phobias and that. So, yeah. So I think there's a lot to it.
Yeah, and I think too, the fear, it took me, still after having the experience that I had, it still took me 30 years to get past that fear.
Yeah.
So and I'm a courageous person, I really feel that I am. And so, but I came in with the asthma, I was born with it. So it's interesting, isn't it, how it all comes full circle, and awareness then dissipates that fear, and voila, you have your miracles. So it's cool.
Exactly. There is so much to it. I mean, if I were to actually go into a clinical science, I would probably look into like some kind of psychiatry with regression as my main agenda with people, because I think that's probably the next big frontier in psychology. It's getting to the root of those issues. I don't think they actually fix people at the moment with what they're doing. Psychiatrists basically just prescribe things that suppress, and I think psychologists work that same way. They suppress it. They don't actually bring it out, and I think that's that's the difference. Regression therapy actually brings it out into the open, lets people understand. I think that's the trigger. It's like you understand why. And I think they've now proved that memories from previous generations are carried through in our cells. Mm-hmm. So what we're really doing is we're actually coming to the realization that, we are our grandmother, we are our mother, we are our so basically everything that they've experienced, we're experiencing, which it does make sense why we all have these neurotic problems. How many thousands of years of neurosis has happened? I mean, it would have been great to be the cave person back in early days. No issue, but occasionally something chases and eats you,
Awareness is empowering, though. I think having that awareness empowers you. See, you have choice then. When you have choice, then you feel like,
and you realize how ridiculous it is for you to have a reaction to something that happened to your grandmother. You know what I mean?
Right.
I have a bit of a theory with these modern feminists. I don't call myself a feminist. My mother, both my grandmother and my mother have been like the first wave and the second wave in England feminists. And that's my definition of a feminist. Basically, they fought for our right to vote and to be equal. This current batch, I find very, I don't know. I don't identify, and I hate the way that they have taken the word feminism and changed it to suit this hatred of everything that's not them. And so I think a lot of labels are being maligned now, which used to stand for very good, truthful things, and that annoys me greatly. But different broadcasts. So anyway, so what was the impetus for you to document your life in the autobiography, Dying for the Light, apart from the obvious NDE itself? How old were you when you did that?
Oh my gosh, 2016. So
you don't share your age if you don't want to.
I don't mind. In my 60s.
So basically you just thought, well, it's about time I wrote one.
I did, and it was kind of to help myself because I had it all over the place, scattered in different places all over the place. Mm-hmm. So to put it in one place, I did it really for my grandchildren. So they would know my story, and I wanted them to know that their grandmother, that really happened, and that for them not to fear. I want them to come in and do what they came here to be and do, and to be free. And I feel like hopefully the book would be inspiring to them to be that way, that it's in their blood, right? They can't help themselves. They gotta, change some things that need to be changed here on the earth. So I believe that's why I wrote it. And and also at that time to just be in alignment with other people who had near-death experiences too. That it was happening, and it has been happening all through our history. And like, what is it? 744 people a day in the United States have near-death experiences. So it's like, it's getting up there, you know, and with our technology that we have now, and people are going to have more and more of this. So it's opening up aspects to ourselves that maybe weren't available before.
I see an NDE as the mechanism to kickstart a vision quest. I think there's lots of ways of going on a vision quest. I went on one when I was quite young, and it was purely through meditation. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of dabbling in astral projection, and then one night I went on this, what I call a vision quest. And I actually met American Indians, and it was kind of being thrown back into a past life. And there was, you know, I met my soul animal and things, you know, it was a very interesting experience. And because yours was so long, I definitely described what you did, the NDE being the initiator of it. But I think a lot of people go on vision quests in different ways, and some do it through meditation, some do it through astral projection, some do it through ritual, like an American Indian sitting there, or they use a psychotic of some type, LSD, or some of the Peruvian more maligned substances. And I think in your case, it happened through an NDE. And I think the ones that are happening through NDEs are, they realize that you have to go on this journey, these other beings, but you're not getting there yourself. So I think they're kind of kickstarting you. They actually, it's a bit of a push to get you there. And whereas the others, they'd be fortunate enough to grow up maybe in different environments where they encourage people to do this on their own. So that's kind of where I kind of see these NDEs. Mm-hmm. But I'm amazed at your NDE because it went on for so long. I mean, most NDEs last up to 10 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, but very short. So, yeah, which is, I wonder if that's why you have a greater memory of it, whereas a lot of people wake up and they just see the tunnel and they see people that have already passed on. Whereas, did you see anyone familiar, or just the beings?
No, just those beings, no. But I do much later, realize that it's my family. It's my star family, right? Yeah. When you have that aha moment, and that it wasn't a coincidence that I went on a spaceship. See, at that time, I knew nothing about that. Was just not in my reality at all. But now that on a spaceship, that's where I come from. You know, it's from that extraterrestrial is me on that spaceship, and that's my family, and that's my familiar. And I had to be, reminded. They go, hey, you're thinking you're just here to work and, and do all these things. And I was looking, but I must have not been doing it fast enough, in a way that I needed to get a job done in it. And I'm a part of a puzzle of a whole plan, of part of it is our relationship with the earth and with our, the cosmos too, and coming up to speed with all of that. So I'm sure I'm a part of that somehow.
I also think a lot of people get ill and get diagnosed with, quite severe illnesses because, again, they're going against where they should be going on their path. And I think a lot of their illnesses kind of steer them back to where they should be, or it's an NDE or something like that. And yeah, I just think there's a lot of severe kind of self-correcting going on.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if that wasn't going on. I mean,
and I came in with asthma, so I had already built a relationship with death. Your breath. If you can't breathe, you're dying all the time. So I learned how to have a relationship with, if I'm going to die, maybe this is the time. So I wasn't as fearful of it as probably as most people in some ways, because of having severe asthma and going up with that. And then after this event, a few years later, I ended up meeting coincidentally a Native American Indian chief, a Lakota Sioux chief, Richard Sparrow Eagle, and I studied with him for 8 years and learned the Lakota traditions. And so I feel like you were saying, the vision quest continued. They wanted to make sure. And so I think I went that far out there into the cosmos that I met him wasn't a coincidence to bring me way down into the earth, because I had the concept on the ship, but I didn't have it in 3D. So I needed to develop that kindredship, that relationship again with the earth. And if anyone's wanting to do that, their traditions are so amazingly beautiful. So
that sounds good. So have you experienced anything similar to the NDE since 1989?
Nothing. No, one's good. One's good. But I did have my good friend, well, not my good friend, a friend, and more of an acquaintance, and a friend. He wrote the foreword in my book, Daniel Brinkley, and he told me, he goes, Barbara Jean, he goes, just be ready, because he saw me having at least 2 more NDEs before I actually pass.
Okay, well, hopefully they're not as painful this time.
Oh, I hope not. And you don't have to, you're right, to get to have these experiences. Studying with a Lakota, or studying in meditation, or doing vision quest, or working with a shaman, and your Australia, your Aborigine shamans, my goodness, that you can have these ultra dimensional experiences where you can go out and learn and then bring it back home, not only to yourself, then make it real and then share it with the world.
That's about right. So obviously you're on Revolution Radio, a station that I support. I've worked myself for a number of years. Now your weekly show is called The Cosmic Oracle. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about it and what they might expect if they tune in one Friday?
I've been doing it. I love it. I have great passion for it, and I get to choose. We were talking earlier, it's like my art form, that I get to pick and choose who I think I would like. Number one, no, just kidding, who the people would like, but I'm hoping that if I think they have something of value to say, that the listeners would. And we do several things. Number one, the number one purpose is for people to have a place to tell their extraordinary experience, whatever that is, however that is, and however that comes down. And then number two would be people who are taking their message to the world somehow, that whatever happened to them was something that was to be given as a gift to the rest of the world. So I try and have people come on a diversity, and from science to I have one of my favorites is a fairy, fae folk, that lineage. And it's a cross section. So it's part interview, it's part storytelling. And then sometimes at the end, depending on how it goes, I'll do a free psychic readings as well.
Oh, cool. That sounds wonderful. So yes, I've been listening into quite a few of your broadcasts. I've been downloading them from the archives. There's a wonderful archive area in Revolution Radio. And you certainly interview a diverse amount of people, and from all walks of life, and from there are some mainstream in there, but majority non-mainstream, which is more alternate, which is how I like to interview too. Because you never know what's going to be said, do you?
No, you don't. And I don't go according to how many hits they have or likes they have. No. I don't care about any of that at all. No, so it's mainly that they're authentic. They're living their talk. They're walking their talk. That's the main criteria.
Exactly. I call it, they're on mission.
Yes.
If they're on mission, I want them. That's how I work. Magazine.
Yeah.
So have you ever had a guest on your show, on the weekly show, that stood out from the rest? Is this the gentleman we were discussing? Yeah.
Yes. Michael Lee Hill.
Michael Lee Hill.
Amazing. And it's michaelleehill.net. He's an amazing man, and he has an extraordinary story. And he shares it in a very eloquent way. And he's a musician, and a very gifted musician. And he had, how he came to notoriety was that he just went out in his East Lake lake there in Ohio and took pictures of UFOs because it's something that he thought would be good, and it just started happening that they would show up. And then he said, well, I'm going to play a little bit here. I'm going to ask them to show up at sunset, and they would show up. So then he started developing a relationship with them. So much so that they were just coming, he would show up and the ships would be there. And then he was getting downloads from them, so much so that when I just talked with him on the show a couple of weeks ago, I've had him on twice or three times actually, he had over 5 million hits on his UFO series that he got picked up on the History Channel. But that's just the beginning of his story. His story just keeps going. He finds that his father is a very famous guitarist, and you'll have to check him out. And then he ended up making these amazing things. He finds out that he is the water bearer, and he's Inky, and he's 100% Iroquois, and he had been adopted. He had no idea that he was Iroquois at all. He met two sisters that he never knew existed, and his life just keeps going and going. It's a tremendous interview. It has nothing to do with me as much as it has to do with his mission, and he's extraordinary. He really is an extraordinary man, and his fiance is a beautiful being, and they have a lot to give, and there's someone to watch out for because it's going to go big time for them with their message as well.
Oh, good. It is that synchronicity of events sometimes takes your breath away, doesn't it? I've had that happen to me a few times in life, and one time I'll share it quickly with yourself. Is I had been living in Sydney. I moved from Brisbane to Sydney, and I was down in Sydney for about 4 or 5 years, and I'd lost track of my brother. There's about a 6-year age difference between us, so he'd always been that it was just that too big a gap, that we weren't friends. We were just siblings, and when I was at school, he was basically out in the workforce, and he moved out. In those days, you moved out of home about 18. So I didn't see much of him as I was growing up, basically in Australia. We came over here when I was about 13, and so the last few years, basically, while I was putting my head down in study, he was out in the workforce already. So I went to Sydney after uni, and I was down there for about 5, maybe 6 years, and then I came back to Brisbane. And I hadn't seen my brother for a long time because he basically had been roving around. He was very much a gypsy elements in of his psyche. So he'd kind of ring my parents, and I'd probably speak to them, and they'd say, oh, I think he's around here, or he's around here, but that's about all that happened for about probably an 8-year period. And so I got back to Brisbane, and I got back, and all my friends were either married or basically had changed groups. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got no friends left in Brisbane. Basically, they were either overseas, or they were getting married, or they'd had kids, for God's sake, so early in those days. And so I thought, I better get myself a new friend group here, because there's only a couple of key people left. And so I joined a group called Rotaract, which is like, I don't know if you have that in the States. Do you have Rotary? Okay. It's kind of like you do charity, but you're also a social group. And Rotaract becomes Rotary when you pass 28. You move into Rotary, and Rotary is more of a bigger organisation.
Oh, yes, Rotary. Yes, of course.
Rotary.
Yes. Sorry.
That's for the young person's Rotary. It's called Rotaract. And so I thought, okay, I'll give that a go. I'd gone to a few of the meetings of a friend in Sydney. That's how I knew about it. And then when I came back, I actually joined the local group up here. And I've made friends for life, which has been great. And anyway, one of the people that I met was a young girl. I think her name was Claire. God, got my memory now, it's just gone. And we got on really well. And so for the next couple of years, she and I became besties, and we did a lot together. And she'd been engaged to this guy for about a year into our friendship. She started going out with this guy called Bob, and I thought to myself, but Bob was always out of state on work. He was more of a salesperson, and every time we tried to organise a get together, he was always out of state, or I didn't turn up. But it was 2 years to the day we organised to finally all have like a group thing at a restaurant, and I was finally going to meet Bob, and so we're sitting there in this Chinese restaurant, and my brother walked in, and I'd always known him as Robert, and it was her fiance.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome!
And
that's awesome.
It was the funniest thing because the whole group of friends were there. So it was probably about 30 people in this restaurant. We'd taken over the place, and my brother walked in, and I got up, and he got up, and we hadn't seen each other for almost 10 years. And
wow.
we just embraced and hugged and kissed, and my friend, who has no concept of who he is to me, and everyone's in there like absolutely aghast.
Oh, right?
My God. And she's there saying, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm hugging my brother, and that's when everyone went, "Oh my God!" It was huge. So
wow,
that is synchronicity, and that happens constantly. You know, so, and like that was probably the most extreme version for my 20s, I think. So how about that? And when you were talking before, it just reminded me of that, how things just sometimes happen, and like that was probably 2 years in the making, to get to that point.
Right. And it's just all set up. You just walk into it.
yeah. Amazing. So look, something that really appealed to me was the fact you co-owned the infamous, I'm going to say famous, not infamous, Integratron. I've never been able to pronounce this. Integratron. I've always, for some reason, I have a problem. Is it normal? A lot of people do. Now you had it for about 5 years.
5 years.
So I thought that was. Are you one of the Carl sisters?
I am not one of the Carl sisters, but she was my best friend during the time.
That makes more sense to me now.
Yeah. We had went there. It was with the husband I had at the time, and we were boyfriend girlfriend, and he used to go there to the Integratron, and they would meet once a month and do all day meditation and hands-on healing work there. Mm-hmm. And he knew the owners, and I met the Carl sisters, and we got along great. And we got a call. So I had been going for several years to the Integratron. So it became, part of our once a month, we would go there and meet up with our tribe there. And we would do healing work and meditation. And you just fall in love with the place. It's a really amazing healing zone. And it just is you can feel the air in there crackle. You can feel, like when you're in a place that's just, something's, it's crispy. It's like crispy there. And so we got a call from the girls, and they said, we're going to go in with 15 other people and buy the Integratron. Would you like to come in and do that with us? And we said, well, I don't think that 15 people could ever get anything done. So how about just the 4 of us do it, and we'll just, pay for half of it. And so we did. And we started working together, and we did a lot of, it was in really bad shape. So we did a lot of cleanup and a lot of work. And during that time, we were building a house in Santa Cruz, California, where I had a healing center for 8 years. And so we lived there at the Integratron for, I think it was almost 3 months on the property itself. And it was never designed for anyone to really live there for a long period of time. But the girls now, one of the girls do live there. Maybe two of them live there now, but we were the first kind of to do that. And what happens when you're there, I'll tell you one story with it, is that I'm there with my kids. I have the 3 kids, and usually there's a couple other kids that are hanging out with my kids. So we have the kids, and we were doing teenage meditation classes there as well. And we didn't go off property for about 30 days because we were painting it, we were working on it, and it's quite a drive to go into town, and it's like 170 billion degrees out, so you just don't go out, right? So it had been like 30 days, so we decided that it was time to go into town and maybe get some lunch and celebrate. So there's like 15 of us, and at the time we owned a bus, a large city bus that we had revamped, because when you work with kids, all their cars are breaking down. So it was easier for us to have a bus, and we took the kids to sun dances and a lot of the Native Star Nations traditions, and took them all there. So we got on the bus and went into town to this little place called Jack's. It's a hamburger place there. We all went in and sat down at this one big table there, and everyone's doing their business, and they don't wait on us. And then they don't wait on us, and we're talking and we're carrying on, right? And they don't wait on us. And I'd say about 25 minutes, no one comes to the table. And then a lady comes up to me, she goes, hello. And we're going, hello, how are you? And she goes, fine. She goes, what's your order? And basically she said we weren't there. She just saw us.
Wow.
We were not there. When we said we had gotten there, she didn't believe us. She said, no, we said, no, we've been here for a half an hour. She goes, no, you just got here. She, no, we've been here for a half an hour. And the only thing we could think of is that there is, the vibration was so high. We had sang on the way, we had meditated. We were all in just a really amazingly great space, all of us together as a unit. Not one person was in a bad mood or anything. We were all united, and I think the energy just went way up that they just didn't see us.
Yeah, you can actually float above your head. I've done that a few times. I do it after I do sky watches, and we've done meditation on a mountain or something. I do a lot of ET kind of C5 work, and which means basically I go and freeze my butt off on a mountain, for about a 5-hour period, and there's probably a good 3 hours of meditation. And I notice the next day I have high strangeness everywhere, and I start talking to people and they don't talk back to me. Yeah, so
that's it.
Yeah, now that helps me now understand. I had my first encounter with a mantis being in that state, and it was actually quite a funny one. They got quite miffed. I was at a petrol station filling my car up with petrol, and I just done a CE5 the night before, and I'm floating, because you float, aren't you? You're kind of floating away, and I'm kind of singing to myself in my head, and then suddenly I turn around and this black bike drives in and parks right behind me. And the creature on it is so skinny. Everything is, but the clad leather, but skinny, like more than I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, it gets off the bike, takes off the helmet, and there's Voldemort, basically. It's a Voldemort look, and kind of, anyway, and he's starting to fill up the bike with petrol. And then suddenly, and everyone's walking past and no one's seeing him as he is. They're obviously seeing this facade, whatever he's putting out. But I'm standing there pumping guts, and I'm looking right at him and thinking, oh, okay. And I'm so chill at this moment. Nothing could have fazed me. And then suddenly he looks at me, kind of looks up, and he kind of looks, and telepathically he kind of goes, you can see me. And I go, and I'm telepathically back going, yeah, but don't worry about it. I'm used to this, And instead of just accepting it, he got really miffed about, he got upset that he wasn't strong enough to block it.
Oh, yeah.
And the funniest thing, the next thing I remember, I'm in my car and I'm 10 minutes down the road the wrong way home. He got so peeved, he kind of
showed you.
And I'm just like, oh, you dickhead, you know. You dickhead. That's like, it's funny now looking back because, you know, I don't know, maybe he was having a bad day. We all have bad days.
We caught him off guard, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, but I know exactly what you're saying when you say that space, you know, you're flying above it. Ooh. So
I think I got the reason why we had the Integratron too is I did a lot of research while I was there about the 50s and the background of, you know, of ufology here in the United States, and I wouldn't have done that if I had not.
Huge down, Joshua Tree,
Yes.
you know, that whole area. As soon as I read that about you, I knew exactly what you were talking about. I knew what you'd bought and everything because being a ufologist, I know all about Joshua Tree, and I know that. And you're like 20 miles from Joshua Tree too. You must have had high strangeness and ET sightings off the scale there.
It became just like, and also it's a very international site. So we always had people jumping over the fence. And so you didn't know, and they were usually from a foreign country, didn't speak very good English.
That would be me. So, that's what I do. You wouldn't believe the places I've broken into, Barbara.
Yeah, so we had quite a bit. And the one story with Yogananda, when Yogananda came to visit there, he said he had told the previous owners that it was on a crystal bed there, and that's why the energy was so strong there too. And they really did. It was meant to be a healing modality, a healing machine. And you walked in one door, stayed for 10 minutes with kind of the Tesla coil. It's like a Tesla coil there. And then you walk out the other side, rejuvenated. And hopefully the plan was 10 years younger. But everything was stopped there. So, and they built the largest military base right next door to it. So that's not a coincidence, right?
No.
Yeah.
And the biggest space is probably way below it too. You know, what you're looking at on top, it's nothing compared to what they've probably got underground there. Seriously.
Right. And so quite a few experiences there, and Giant Rock and Crystal Hill, and
one of my future stops. A lot of that area, probably a good 3 weeks just there.
Yes.
So after 25 years as a spiritual teacher and 4 years on air helping people with their supernatural experiences, you must have had a number of epiphanies about life, the universe and everything, and not 42. What would be the top 3 essential truths that everyone on earth should be aware of?
That we're amazing, that we're extraordinary. That's number one. I think it's important, and that we love ourselves. Yeah. Just the way we are. If we can come from that love base, we came from that love, we are that love, we return to that love. If we can just not be so hard on ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves in so many ways. If we could just tell that stinking thinking to stop and go back to the love part, just reset to the love part, it'll change everything. I think that's the number one thing. Number 2 is to let go, to really let go. And you really can't control anything really once you get to know that. So you might think that you do, and you're really busy, and that keeps you really busy. So let go. There's that part. If you let go, there's a whole new world within this world that you can live in. And you can be here at the same time, but it's where it's more of an intuitive let go. It's a little bit, what I found is more feminine. It's a feminine way to live. It's soft. It moves, it flows like the river. And if you can just trust, sink into that trust a little bit, your life will be sweeter, and you'll remember this planet the way it was way back in the day. And the third thing would be to redream a new dream. And not only personally, but to remember, and then as a collective, we can have peace on this planet. We can clean this planet up. It can be a paradise. We can do all of these things, and not just in our minds. It's going to have to take action, dedication, responsibility, and all of the above. But it's counting on us to show up. So there's no spectators, like, in this life. You got to come in on it. And I guess there's a fourth one. Find why you're here. That's probably number one too. Find why you're really here. We're all here for very different reasons. And then once you find out why you're here, find your tribe and work with them. So.
Exactly. Yes, that's so true. When you say let go, also let go of fear, hey?
Yes, exactly.
Which is the biggest thing that holds us back from accomplishing our missions.
Yeah, I think that's why I taught firewalking. And that's the coincidence, like you were talking about, where I had a client who asked me if I would go with her. Long, coincidentally story. And when I went with her, I didn't know it was teaching firewalking, and we would be walking on a 108-foot fire and all these things happening. And I had never walked on fire before. I had no desire to walk on fire.
Who does?
But what I learned was how to have a relationship with fear. And that's what firewalking is about, because fear is right in your face, up close and comfortable. And either you talk with it, work with it, and then make a decision, how you're going to handle it. Now, with firewalking, the key to firewalking is that you want to bring your energy up so it's equal to and greater than that of the fire before you walk. And that's kind of like it is in life. If you have a challenge or something, bring your energy up. Be there, fully present. Be fully present here. It's so cool to have a really vital life. I mean, vitally alive, and you can taste things and feel things and enjoy things to their utmost. Don't settle for just being, mostly dead.
Yes, which sadly is what most people do at the moment. So which interviewees have you had the most fun with on air?
Okay. I was thinking about this. I have several because I like to have a good time when I'm on the air. I just recently had Karen Swain from Australia.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but I was on her show, so that one wouldn't count. But it would be, I had this amazing lady. Her name's Halloquin. It's halloquin.net. And I don't know how we came to be, but she teaches all about the fairy and the fae folk. And
yes. I had Karen Kay. Have you done Karen Kay yet?
No, I have to have her then.
She's a magazine, and she was a delightful lady.
She did a meditation for everyone and took them to visit the fairy queen, and she's just. And she walks her talk. It's her life. She breathes it. She is it. And so I had the best time. I felt like a 10-year-old, and she's an amazing storyteller. That art form of storytelling, she has down. She just takes you right there. It was awesome. So that for me is one that really stands out, is her for sure.
It's funny. I always used to say in the magazine, fairies were my line in the sand. I wouldn't go to fairies, and it's kind of like I must have kind of said that so many times that out there they went, right, let's throw it at her. And within about a month, I had 3 people approach me with photos of real life fairies. I had to actually, accept the fact that there was such a thing as the fae, and
yes.
The photos were you couldn't dispute them. It was, and everything that goes into the magazine goes off to a photographer friend of mine who teaches at a university, and he qualifies everything. And basically, he came back and he finds me particularly annoying because he's grounded in logic, and I send him things. I've sent him 4 things now over the last 6 years that he hasn't been able to say are fake or anything, or show any problem with. And he hates that. He says it's not logical. He says it's not logical that you could send me this. And I said, but is it real? He says, I can't. And he'll do all the wording to basically say, yes, it is real, but he won't actually say that. Do you know what I mean? He'll say, well, it doesn't have this or this or this. So I said, so that means it's real, doesn't it? You know, and he goes, well, you could say that. And he still won't actually, even though he's proved it, it's good enough to go into the magazine.
Yeah, in his face.
But he won't actually, he's still in that denial camp where most of the world sadly still is. But I do enjoy him as a person, because you need people like that in your life, not 24/7. You can't live with people like that if you're in our kind of world. But occasionally they're good fun, and they kind of balance you. I think that's the word,
Yeah, we have to have the fun, the joy part. We can't lose that.
No.
We really can't. So if we lose that, we're in really trouble, because the vibration goes way down.
Well, and I think this is why a lot of people shed friends when they have their awakening, or I hate using that word personally, but when people do wake, because being woke now is, they kind of bastardized that phrase, haven't they? And it's now got more of a political kind of thing, which I hate about it. But I find a lot of people that say they're woke or whatever.
There's words that's just words, right? It's instead of
ridiculous phrasing is saying. But like, once you've had you've woken up to a different reality, I suppose, of our world, the first thing a lot of people do is they shed their negative friends or their more grounded friends. And I mean, in certain cases, my personal view is, you shed the more toxic that's in your life. You should do anyway, and most people do periodically anyway. But you should, just because they're logical and not in our sphere, of that state, doesn't mean you get rid of them. It just means you maybe use them more as a balancing board and don't interact with them maybe as often, but I still think you keep that balance in your life. Otherwise you might go off the deep end in a way and go right into woo-woo land, like a balloon flying out.
I'm sure that's why I had 3 children with me to come back into. I didn't have time to go way out there, maybe from 5:15 to 5:30, but that's about it, because I had to be a mom and take care of my kids and do a good job and be a part of the community and do all of that, which I did, and I still continue to be a part of it. So it is definitely a balance, but I found that I can be anywhere. It doesn't matter. And I don't even have to say what I do. I can be at a ball, I can be at a rock concert, I can be at an opera, I can wear it all. It's really, really fun. I love the diversity. And a lot of times I don't tell people what I do. I don't have to. But also, people will come up to me and say, what do you do? Because they know something's up and they can't quite sure put their finger on it. And then that leads me into, I'll get okay, should I tell the story or not? And then sometimes it's like, tell the story. And then I don't want to tell the story. Tell the story, and no, I don't want to tell the story, but not very often. So, yeah.
You probably have what I have too, where I stay away from shopping centres and things and places where there's a lot of people, because I don't know, it just gets a little draining, very draining actually. But I find if I sit down in a shopping centre, if I don't keep moving in a shopping centre and I actually take time to sit down, people will just come and sit next to me and tell me the most bizarre thing, personal things about themselves.
It's true.
And like, you just kind of like, I expect it now, but in the early days of it, and I understand why they're doing that, but that's why I keep on the move now. If I'm going to a shopping centre, basically I have an agenda. I know where I'm going, and basically I'm in and I'm out. And, they still get me when I'm queuing up to pay for something. Right. And they but in the early days, I used to sit down to have a coffee. And even if I've got somebody across from me, somebody at the next table will start talking to us. And and an hour later, you know, they've had they're feeling a lot better and they're walking away, and I am like a shell. You know, it's just like, oh my God, where did all my energy go? It's but yeah, I imagine you're very much that way too.
Well, I'm not anymore. I think I used to be, but I'm not anymore so much. I don't mind going. I probably not my first choice to go, but but if I do have to go, I really like watching people, and I like seeing.
I do. I love people.
I really like to see where they are and what they're doing, and I do see that I am different, but I'm them and they're me, and so I can just I kind of enjoy it now. Isn't that I just kind of found my peace with it, I guess, in some ways, but it's oh gosh, and there's it is a separation there, though. There is somewhat of a separation, I must say, that is there as well.
I have I've been told I have this other stare, which is when I am walking around, I kind of I zone out. I have a zone out stare where I can stare. My neighbor, who I'm very good friends with, she has a huge family of brothers and sisters, and I know all of them really quite well. And they've said to me at family events that I've been invited to, you know, we saw you at the centre or somewhere or in town the other day, and you stared right through me, and we were within a metre of each other, and you didn't even acknowledge that I existed. Oh. And I've had that so many times, and I think what I've done now is because I've had to be out in public, and people do harass. It's not harassing, but it's kind of like I suppose it's before I understood about protection and protecting myself with things. And I got to the point where it was like, God, I'm so sick of not being able to function because people steal my energy all the time. So kind of like this vampiric thing was going on. And I understand they need it because they haven't had certain things in their life to get them to where we are, I suppose, in a way. And I'm not saying that from an ego perspective, but like it was like you were saying before, some people vibrate at different levels, and the higher the vibration. I'm sure your vibration is very high, and I think it can
be, and then it can be low too.
But I just find that I think this stare developed that I have. Where I don't even realize I'm doing it. And as I said, it's I've got a very aloof, people might, I suppose, view me as a bit aloof. Then I'm not really. It's just, it's a protection mechanism. And thank God I've learned about real protection now. You know, so when I go to those places, I do the whole visualization with the white light, or I use golden light these days. I had a wonderful dream about this golden world and this wonderful open air bridge which was paved with gold and stuff, and from that dream I got told that I should be using golden light. Have you heard of gold?
I like that. Gold's always good. I like gold. I'm a gold person. I like pink a lot. And then last night in the middle of the night I had this whole group of beings around my bed, and they were having kind of a party with me, and I just got the last part of it. And what they did was something amazing. It's something that I love. I've never been to India, but where they do that beautiful colored powder, you know, the different colors. I just think that's so gorgeous. And they were doing this with green, all that green. That beautiful emerald green around my bed, and that's the last thing I remember with them. But it was like.
Oh, well, I wear a lot of pink, as you can tell. So
kind of that's your color. Yeah, you find your color. I think for me it's emerald green because of my experience, but I also always gravitate. I think my favorite color is turquoise. It's always been turquoise, and that might be the Atlantean part that you were talking about too. Yeah.
Well, I think the heart chakra is emerald green and pink, isn't
it? Yes, both.
So in as simple a sentence as possible, what is consciousness to you?
Okay.
I do it.
Okay. If I could, I wrote it in my book, and
Go.
it's my own view of it. And so, in the back of Dying for the Light is a small glossary, and I didn't look at anything. I just not channeled it, but looked at my own view of what I thought they were. And so, for consciousness, I wrote simply the everyday state of being in which you are awake and aware of yourself and your surroundings in relationship with yourself, the earth, and the cosmos.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's it. That is it in a nutshell. That's great.
So just simple, it's and another way of saying it's kind of aware of being aware.
Mm. Or
So,
being present.
and being fully present. That's right. Yeah.
I hate using that other phrase, which has become overused, mindfulness,
It has nothing to do with it.
No, I know. People don't get that though. It's funny. I started a mindfulness course at my daughter's school. But I noticed they advertise it for parents, a 3-week course, and they do this occasionally at the school. This was 2 years ago, and I thought, oh look, that's amazing. The school's offering this. I think I'll go along. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, within 10 minutes of sitting down, I was ready to leave because it was completely not what mindfulness was. And and I actually voiced my opinion at one point, and it was like the opposite of being accepted. It was like, ooh, what is she doing here?
You challenger, you rule breaker.
So I didn't go back for the second and the third, and realized that I should stick to my own tribe. So because that tribe didn't want me at all.
No, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm often told by people that we're all telepathic beings on Earth, and we've just forgotten how to activate our abilities. And I've previously had telepathic communication with both a grey and also with a mantis. So I know that that's probably how it's done out there. From your knowledge base, can every human being activate telepathy? We can do it. We've just forgotten how. Is that your experience?
I believe so. I really do. I believe we came in with that. That is part of our inherent gift, and we just need to exercise it. It's like exercising a muscle. It's really, now there's going to be people that, like a Mozart, there's Mozart people in this field, and then there's the ones that they really have to struggle to get it. So you'll have that variance for sure. But I feel like everyone has a talent, and that talent it can be the telepathy for sure. I think that's where we're going. Hopefully that's where we're going as a species, is telepath. And the more we can practice it amongst ourselves, find a partner and telepath with that partner. A lot of people who are married, where they become looking like one person and they have this telepathic charge. The same with the mother with her child, of course. Me, I have a little rescue dog, Mary Margaret, and her and I, man, we are telepath. I mean, it is clear as can be. And so I really do believe that, yes, we are all telepathic. And I really, hopefully, it will be great, because you can say so much with telepathy. It reminds me of fine art, like when you make a painting and there's 10,000 words in that one painting, and a telepath in that one painting would be 100,000 words, or pictures or feelings. There's a feeling with the telepath too. It's not just mind or visual. There's also a heart connection and a feeling part of that modality too. I think we're just on the new frontier of really remembering that and how it all works.
I see telepathy coming in as the end of crime as well, because you'll be able to identify, I suppose, not to get too biblical, but what an evil person is. You'll be able to sense it instantly. I mean, we all sense it from certain people now, but we don't act on it. But telepathy will kind of rip back the the Band-Aid in a way.
Yeah, and it's to activate it and to use it. We just need to use it. That's all. And some of us are waiting for permission to use it. Well, don't just do it.
I know what you're saying about the animal connection. I've got a cat called Chester who is beautiful, and she and I have at times had full-on discussions, and people just look at me when it's happening, and it's kind of like, okay, got to stop looking weird. It's kind of like people that also talk to plants. I mean, I talk to plants.
I do
same thing.
too. Yes, of
That's
course.
telepathy, really, isn't it?
Yes, my babies. They're my babies. I touch them. They want me to touch them. I like them, and I play music for them. They like Mozart. That's this little plant here, Peggy. That's her favorite. So.
So you already know I'm a huge fan of Contact in the Desert,
Yes.
and it's in the top 3 events I need to attend in the next 5 years. You host the Cosmic Cafe Experiences Gathering at Contact in the Desert, which I believe is a collaborative space to share personal, extraordinary stories from paranormal contact with non-human intelligence and UFO sightings to out-of-body experiences and the altered states. That's straight from the website, by the way.
I wrote that. Thank you very much.
What has been your most rewarding experience over the past 5 years of hosting the Cosmic Cafe? What is there one that stood out that basically floored you that came out?
I don't think there's one. You think there would be? I don't have one. I see it as a collective. And that is when people come in, if they can break through that fear, and I do energy work, to help them get there, and so when they come in, to see them so they can be restrictive or and to see them just open up is so beautiful, just by telling their story and being heard in a safe place. That a lot of the people cry. There's a lot of crying. It's the first time they've ever told their story to anyone ever. There'll be people that come that were not going to tell their story, that tell their story. There are people that didn't know they had a story that tell a story. Yeah. So it's a beautiful place. And my work is to just set the energy and have it. It's like a temple, where people come and gather for healing and an exchange of information. So
it's a one-on-one experience. One-on-one.
It's one-on-one with the group, and it has grown. When I got that in meditation, I called Victoria. She's the one who runs it. And I said, it's a long story how I got to her, but she happened to pick up the phone, coincidental. And I said, I have this idea in meditation that I feel like I love Contact in the Desert, and I just feel like, where are the people telling their stories? The real contactees, why aren't they represented? I really think they need to be represented. And here's my idea. It's a Cosmic Cafe. And she loved it. I wrote everything out, sent it to her, and that's how it started. And she went with me. She had never heard of it before. No one had been. It had been done, but more secret and in the back door. And I wanted it out open. We have nothing to hide. This is a beautiful thing, and it's a learning exchange. And where one of us go, we all go together. And so it started out very small, and then it got huge. We would have like 150 to 200 people show up to one, and then we had to break them down. That's why they're broken down to 4 this year. And so, and you can have any kind of story. They're not split up or anything. So whatever story. And if you come, then we just ask that you sit and help the others tell their story and hold the energy for them. So there aren't many rules or anything like that, but it's while someone else is talking, that you hold the energy for them to tell their story. And what we have been too is opening it up a little bit. It depends on how many people are there. I've worked a lot with people from 10 people to, I think the biggest was 350 people at one time, rebirthing 350 people at one time with 2 other teachers. And so I've worked a lot having, where you're just made to do this. I was just made to do this. And so I'm there. And so what we do is we'll go with, depending on the group, really the structure of the group. I'm able to kind of read it and see it. Anyone can do that. I mean, any psychic can do that. And And so as I'm sitting there, then I'll just kind of, then after they've said their story, it depends, but other people, I'll ask them, this is what we're talking about. Tune into your intuitive. What is there something you would like to add? Is there something you'd like to ask? Is there something that you might have in exchange with her? And we've been doing that. So now it's not only telling your story, we're actually really connecting people. Oh, it's really cool. It's really so it's evolving itself. You know, we're starting and it has its own life to it, which is really gorgeous. And then this year will be the 4th year. It's my first time I'll be doing a lecture there. So yay! So I'm excited about that. So yeah, so come and tell your story and feel good about it, you know. Or get some direction or get an aha, but get a step forward. You're not stuck. You can take a step forward, whatever that's going to be, and it'll be in a positive way.
I think that's great. I've noticed I stopped going to our local UFO group here because I noticed a lot of newbies would come and then they would never come back because it was too intimidating, that kind of forum. So what you're putting forward there, I think, is perfect. Yeah, we need to do something like that over here. I also find a lot of group stuff becomes too political, and that puts people off.
Yeah, we're not. It's real simple. I keep it real simple, and we do it in a circle. So it's a circle too, a circle. So there's no hierarchy. We all bring something very important to the table. We all show up. We're there, and we're accountable, and we all bring something to share. So.
Oh, sounds good. No, I think you're on the. I definitely think you're onto the right thing there, especially if it's been going for. Is it? So this is the 5th year.
Oh, I forget. I don't know if it's the 4th or 5th, something like that. I think it's the 4th. It could be the 5th. Isn't that terrible? I don't remember.
No. I think you're right, actually. So you have turned your already prolific hand to writing, and are now the author of 3 books, I believe, and you've also done a story in a further 4th book. We've already discussed your autobiography, Dying for the Light. Would you tell us more about Seized by Sekhmet and the White Light Meditation, Expand Your Consciousness? And hold your books up if you have them there so we can see what they look like.
I looked for my other one and I couldn't find it, but the White Light Meditation one is kind of, I made that to kind of go with Dying for the Light.
It's like a companion guide?
It's a companion guide. It's kind of the meditation that I got afterwards because I meditate a lot. That's how I healed myself. A part of it is through meditation. I would soak in a soaking tub, and water is real important to me still. And after I had my experience, and when I was in the hospital, down the hall was a Victorian bathtub, and I soaked in that for those 10 days, and that's how I healed myself, a lot of it. So I still like to soak in water and do healing work there. And so meditation. So that's one of the tools that I use, and I thought I'd just pass it on. So it goes with the Dying for the Light if you want, and that's kind of why I made it. So that's that one. And then this one is Seized by Sekhmet. Can you see that? Or
yes, that's is that Anubis on the cover?
No, this is Sekhmet. She's a lion-headed female goddess.
Okay. Yes, now I can see it. It wasn't very clear before. That's good. Yes. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. And so, what happened with her is do you want the story, or do we have time for that? Or?
Yes.
Okay. So, which time was it I went to Egypt? The first time I went to Egypt, they didn't tell me that her temple and her statue has never been moved. Okay, it's still there. It's still intact from how many thousands of years, no one really knows.
Amazing that that's the case.
Yeah, and so her ka is there, her energy is in there, and so you get a special permission, and you're able to go in with your group, and each person was able to get 5 minutes with her. I was just minding my own business. I had no idea about her. I had never thought about her at all. I'm allergic to cats. So she just was off my radar, right? So I walk into her temple. It's very, very dark, extremely hot outside. It's cool in there. And she's about 7 foot tall, very narrow. I have an image of her here. Where it is. Oh, I don't see it right now. So she's right here. My grandson gave her to me. So I'm in her temple. She's very tall. She's very thin. She has a lotus and an ankh staff, a lotus staff and an ankh. She's very beautiful. Um, and I'm just standing there, and she comes out of her statue, like you, like me looking at you in 3D. She walks out, and when she walks out, a ring of fire comes around us, and then she puts down a golden stairs, like steps. She motions to me to step on the step. Everything's telepathic. I step on the step. The base of the step fills with that same looking kind of warm water. That it's warm, but the dark water, like when I went for my near-death experience, is there. And she locks in on me with her big red eyes, and that's the sees part where she sees me. And I'm standing on her steps, and she has seized me, and she tells me that I'm powerful and that I've earned it. And, basically, why don't I act like it? Kind of, because I was going through a really bad divorce, and I was having a really hard time coming into my power. I'm a very loving, giving, good, healer, all of that. So what she was telling me is to come into my power. And her energy was so strong that it cracked my front tooth, and my body was shaking. My whole body and my teeth were chattering. And so when she kind of says to me, "Did you get it? You got it?" And then I said, "Uh-huh." And that's all I said. I could hardly say anything out at all. And then when she was done with me, then she just kind of made a nod, and then the water came up, the fire went back. I stepped off, she put up the steps, and she walked back into her statue. And they came and got me, the leader, and carried me out, kind of walked me out. And I cried for 3 days. Cried and cried and cried. Cried for the world, cried for man's inhumanity to man, cried for my sisters, cried for my brothers, cried, just cried and cried and cried until it was all complete. And then I felt so light and so great. So I got an extreme healing from her. And what I found out is that afterwards, this is about, I don't know, 3-5 years later, I'm in meditation, and she comes into me. She always comes to this side. She came in, or this side, maybe more is this side. And she comes in and she says, "I'd like for you to write a book about your experience with me." So I said, "Okay, sure, no problem." And I go onto the computer and I write it. I'm going to do this. I go into a website, her Sekhmet goddess website. I had never been in it. The administrator happens to be there, gives me permission. I write, I'm going to write a story about my healing with Sekhmet. Would you like to tell about your story? And so then I step back, I go back into meditation, and I'm thinking, what did I just do? I don't know I'm not going to write. I don't have time to write. I don't want to do this. That's crazy. Get out of town. So I go back and I go, I'll just delete it. No one will ever know the difference. So I go back in, and my, the website's blowing up with people who had stories. And so I have a whole bunch of different people's stories from just all across section of people who've had extraordinary experiences with her. So they're all in here. And I'm an artist, so not an artist, but a designer. And so I have a lot of beautiful artwork of people with her. But she has never left. She's always been here. And so you can tune into her. And I have a lot of Sekhmet friends now. So
as it happens.
As it happens, yes. Yeah. And so she is just alive and strong, and in our life right now, if we want her to be a tool to be used to help you in any way that she can. She has a very interesting story. You'll read it in the book, or you can go on to YouTube and hear her story. She has an interesting story.
I was actually going to do some Egyptian stuff in the magazine, so I might start with her, like do a bit of biography.
Yes, yes, yes. You're free to use anything out of my book too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely quote you. So coming up in August this year, you will be leading a spiritual retreat to Glastonbury, England, to perform a ceremony in Stonehenge, which sounds amazing. And would you tell us a little bit more about the ceremony you'll be performing and the expected outcomes from it for your tour attendees? I mean, why do people want to do this? I mean, I've done a spiritual roadshow myself for my own reasons, but it's interesting to me that people would sign up to do a tour with strangers. Like I took along two good friends with me on mine, and I suppose I just wondered why they wouldn't be doing it with their tribe, I suppose, but maybe not everyone has a tribe.
I think for me, I love the area. Number one, I'm passionate about it. I studied there for 3 years with Kathy Jones with the goddess, her goddess classes that she teaches in her books, and I just had to be there and be a part of it and breathe it. I know I've had past lives there too, and with the tour, and I wanted to share that. So it's more of a not only a goddess within you to get in touch with that, but also about your lineage or heritage involving the Arthurian movement, and there's just that whole lore and that romanticism and
it is romantic. Yes.
It's so romantic and beautiful and powerful, and I've had lots of experiences there. Not with ET, but with different beings there at the Chalice Well. There's the red well and then the white well. I love the white well. I probably love it more than the red well. And I'd like to just share these and all of these experiences with the people that come. And I just got it like I did in meditation, and we'll see if people come or not. And I have a lot of friends there and know people that they're good teachers and healers themselves. And then also we're going to do it in August, so that I've been there many times because I love the crop circles. So we would incorporate the crop circles there as well, visitation into the crop circles. So it's a crop circles, it's goddesses, and then I happened to be in London staying in a hotel when it was the first time that Stonehenge was open to the public. In many years. I don't have to remember that time, but I happened to be there. So I rented a taxi. Now I think about this later. And it's like an hour and 45 minutes away or something, and went there and got to be there with the stones. And now they have that fence around it, and you have to have special permission, which we would have to have a ceremony there. And so I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I'll know when I get there what I'm supposed to do.
Just don't slaughter anything on the slaughter stone.
Yeah, no. It would be like it would depend on who comes and what they need and how we can be of service and also have a wonderful, amazing, fun time at the same time.
Yes, I know when I went back in 2006, you weren't allowed to touch the stones anymore, which I thought was, well, what's the point in going there if you're not to get the energy of the stones? And I had this big debate with the police officer, one of the police officers that guards it. And I said, well, look, this is pointless coming here if you can't actually put your hands on a stone. I said, how are you supposed to, feel the energy of the space? Or walk around the space and in between. And he just said, and his excuse was, people have been chipping away parts of the stones and taking them home. And I just said, well, if you're here, that won't happen. So why can't I just walk over and put my hands on a stone?
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have any good reason why I couldn't do that.
And I'm finding it where we're traveling, that's more the likelihood of that happening, that there's fencing around all of the wonderful historic relics that we have. And so it's wrong. I agree with you. It's totally wrong that people respect it. we're mostly good, loving people. That I know there's that whole part out there, but like you said, if you have the police, I totally agree with you.